I'm an application specialist for Autodesk. I focus on the Maya range of products, that's my motion builder, my box, and also soft enlarge. So my background is I've worked in production for many years, build games, etc. So I've been involved there since the acquisition of the Autodesk or soft enlarge. I used to look at soft enlarge and transfer. So what I'm going to be going through in the time I've got, which isn't a great deal of time, I'll be going through the box, a little bit of Maya, and also some of motion builder, depending on how I go. What I'm going to focus on really is how you interop between those packages. So you may be aware of the suite offerings that we do, and basically the suite's all about using the right tool for the right job at the right time. We're not going to try and force things upon people. So I'm going to be looking at basically how you work between Mudbox and say Maya, for example, because the two are very much linked together. That's how they're meant to work. So, because many of you will know. ZBrush is a very, very good package, and Mudbox is every bit as good as ZBrush, it's just used slightly differently. So I'm going to start with this character mesh here. So it's pretty high. I've got sculpt layers on here as well. I've got no sculpt layers on here, but I've got a lot of paint layers. And as you can see, if I right click using my new mic release, this is what thank you. Got a quite high dense mesh, so I've already done some work on this, but if I wanted to change this, if I need to re-topologise this mesh, which is very common in this type of workflow, this is all I've got. I've got nothing else. I've got no subdivisions at all. I could have received this from an outsourcer. There's an OBJ format, for example. So what you can do inside Mudbox now is you can actually rebuild levels of subdivision for you, provided that you use a certain algorithm. So I can set my model, and in the mesh menu I've got rebuild subdivision levels. So if I click that, I'll basically analyse the mesh, and it will essentially find 3 lower subdivision levels for me. So if I now use page up and page down, I can now sort of go down, right back down to level 0, which would have been the initial starting point for this mesh. Now the reason why I've been able to do that was this mesh was smoothed or subdivided using the Catwalk Dark algorithm, which is probably one of the most common algorithms used in most big packages. Max, Maya, soft enlarge, DE, whatever, they all use it as the underlying smoothness. Because of that, I've been able to break this down to the lowest level subdivision as well. So I can bring back my diffuse textures, and of course I've got some problems here as well. So I've got this now started to corrupt the UVs, and I can see that it's not looking too great. So I need to fix that as well. So this is where the interop with the 3D package comes in handy. So this is where I'm going to take this into Maya and clean this up. And I can also change the subdivisions as well. I can even start to revise the topology of this object as well. Say, for example, I want to maybe remove some of these baseline edges, I want to clean this up. So that's going to be quite some big changes, and I want to have those changes reflect on my model as well. So I may want to build upon this further on. So what I can do is, if I select my model, and now I use the send to features, so I've already got Maya open, so I can send this as a new scene. And what the send to features do as part of the single step interop is they essentially send this data over to Maya using FBX in the background. So you see these options here that say like send to subdivision, send to max. That's essentially FBX in the background. But these are shortcuts really. You can actually create your own send to button as well. We're only using the same FBX technology. So if I now go into Maya, and we can see there's a mesh tool coming across in exactly the same wall space as well, and I've even got textures as well. We can see that I've got my model there as well. So again, I've got all these kind of things I want to do and change, and I can now start going about fixing those UVs as well. So I can even make some changes to the actual mesh as well, and I can even make some additional changes if I want to as well, because I've got this that down at the bottom here, which you can't quite see here. Just move this over just a little bit so you can actually see it. just got to notice about there, you've got this say connected to Maya. And basically what that means is there's a connection there, really. It's a connection that Mudbox has with Maya. And it's not a live link, but it basically means that it's exported some data. And as long as that connection's there, I can keep pinging data to and from all the time. And I can also choose to update certain things as well. So I can sort of even now go to File, and I can even update the current scene. I can even update textures in the current scene as well. Or I can even just choose to say send select as an entirely new scene and just replace the one I've already got inside mine as well. So again, this is all about the interacting with the product at the right time. So if I just do this again. In this case, I've got all my textures. So now what I can do, I can go about changing some things here as well. So if I bring up my mesh, for example, and what I want to do is maybe revise some of these UVs, but also change some of the topology. So again, I can start using my polygon tools. So I can use my new split polygon or re-tactor split polygon, and I can start adding some various edges or triangles where I want them to actually be. So I am making minor topology changes at this point, for example, just to maybe clean up the UVs. Now, of course, what I could do is I can import the high-res mesh. Again, I said it was an OBJ format. I can actually import that into Maya and copy the UVs over from that mesh onto this one as well. So if I was to just go to File and Import, and put down my scenes, there they are. So I've now got this MB file already there. Let's just import that in. So you can see that I've got that high-res density mesh again, so you can see how it's density loss. So what I can now do is, and all my UVs are actually there as well. So I've got to be UV texture editor. You can see they're all there. That's what I actually want. So what I'm going to do is just now essentially shift-click the other head, go to my mesh transfer attributes, and I'm just going to make sure UV sets are on, vertex normals are on. Just transfer it across. Now that will transfer the UVs across. So I'm going to fix all that. That's now done. I don't need the high res. I'm going to delete my history. And now just delete my high res. So there's my UVs all kind of fixed as well. So now also may want to make some changes as well. So I may want to change some of the edges and some of the edge loops, for example. So again, I can easily just go into here and start to maybe think about maybe sort of deleting something here as well. And again, I'm actually just making some big fundamental changes to topology here. And all the time, I've still got that scene inside Mudbox already open. I could do this by to mirror it. I'll just be a bit quick here, just for the purpose of this demo. So let's just select all these. So every other one. And I can also add stuff as well. So again, I'm just going to be give you a quick idea. So actually. So that's all done. I'm happy with that. So what I can do now, I can send those changes back into Mudbox. So again, I can use my update button, and I'll take those back into Mudbox. And then straight away in Mudbox, you now get this transferring details dialog. And what this will basically do, it will transfer those topology changes onto the mesh inside Mudbox. And I'm not going to lose anything. I'm not going to lose any of the paint layers or anything like that as well. So we've got an advanced tab here. We can expand this and see. And I can see I can choose like different types of samples. And again, if I hover over it, you get a help menu as well. I can even subdivide the target to a specific subdivision layer as well. So I've got complete control over what the transfer option actually does. I can leave it automatic if I want. And again, I can do joint weights as well, because we support skeletons and joint weights as well. And of course, sculpt layers as well. So I'm just going to leave that as it is. I'll just click import. And that'll go to work. So this is really useful. Basically means you're not going to lose any work. And I've now got that inside, so that transfer is now taking place, and I can now sort of go right back down to the level again. You can see there's those edges that I actually removed, and there's those extra edges that I actually added in as well, and you can see everything all still works exactly the same before. And now, once I've got that, I've made those changes, I can now go about and then start maybe adding some stuff inside here as well. So again, this is what we want to try and do in part of the suite. Chances are, if you're using Mudbox, you're already using Max on Hire anyway. And people say that, why don't you add more modelling tools into Mudbox? You already sit on top of one of the best modelers in the business with Maya or Max. So it's about working the two together, and that's how Mudbox was first created. Maya was the DCC app, and Mudbox was the perfect complement to it. So, and again, I can now start, sculpting them to start page up again. And I can even add more subdivisions on as well. Shift D, and I can now start maybe adding a sculpt layer as well, and I can now start going in and a bit better. So I can now start going to here and using the sculpt brush and sculpt the wool. That's there. And of course I can start doing whatever I need to do. So again, it's about non-destructive workflow, making those changes. And of course at any time, I've still got that connection to Maya. This scene inside Maya is still open, it's still there. So if any time I think, I've got to go back to Maya and change something there, I can do that very easily. So as long as I've got the two open together, even if you close one of the packages, you can still use the send to function if you want to, and take all that out as well. So, now I'll show you how that works in terms of looking at painting and also textures as well. So if I start with a new scene, well this time I'm going to use actually the entire guy, so the main full character. We'll start looking at some painting features as well. Now you can actually use that in conjunction with your DCC app as well. So here's this main dude. You can see he's got quite a bit there. I've got specular, but incandescence there as well. I've got different objects in this scene as well. I've got I've got the main body, but I've also got these things as well. Now what I want to do now, I want to maybe start thinking about adding some textures, or adding some more paint layers, for example. And I've got multiple objects. So as I said, I've got these things here on this chest plate. So I've got this loincloth here as well, which of course are different objects with different UV islands as well. Now, if I want to paint over that, I shouldn't have to worry about painting textures over that, over those particular details. So in Mudbox, you can do that. You don't have to worry about any of that kind of stuff at all. So I'm just going to turn off the wireframe, for example. So this just say, for example, up here on the actual head as well. I've got the nose ring there, something different, and I want to maybe paint over all of this. So what I'm going to do is go to the image browser, and I've already got some things here that are all ready to go. I'm going to use maybe the Jetson brush, and I'll use this one here as my snap image. So I want to basically paint this over onto my guy's chest, but I want to make sure I'm going to make it really big as well. And I'm going to kind of deliberately paint over stuff as well. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to add a new diffuse layer. So of course I can go up to like 4K in my diffuse layers, but we can add more support for that as well. Choose all my file formats, again all the main protagonists are actually there, and again I can choose all the kind of different separate channels as well. So let's choose diffuse, and now I'm going to just paint this guy and just paint over those areas. You see how easy it will be to not have to worry about painting over different things. So I can paint over any kind of that stuff as well, and you see I'm going to paint over those objects, and there's no distortion at all whatsoever. I don't have to worry about it. I have to match things up on different UV islands. So again, if I go to my UV view, you can see that I'm able to paint over different UV islands without having to worry about matching all that. And you can even extract the texture map or extract the diffuse map based on that diffuse layer as well. And again, this is where the painting tools really come into their own inside my box. Now, and of course, I can even go in here as well and start saying, well, maybe that's a bit kind of not too good there. I need to kind of clean that up. So again, I can use the paint erase button. And I can start going in here and tuning all this up as well. And again, I've got complete control. And again, this is one object, and the body's another object. And you would never know that unless I've actually told you. So I don't have to worry about that. But of course, this is a bit bright, it's a bit primary. It's not very kind of good. So I want to maybe control how I want to have that light on my character. Now, of course, I could use the opacity, strength. I could dial this down. But what we've also got is we've got full support for Adobe's Photoshop blend modes. So all the blend modes from the layers are still there. Talking about that, you can't even see it, so I will. My apologies. as I was saying, we've got full support for Photoshop layers and all the blending modes as well. There you go, that's the layer. So here, if I click that, each layer has its own, they look, you'll notice the terminology is exactly the same. You know, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We've asked our customers what they want to interact with. They said interact with Photoshop, same terminology, same blend modes. Fine, just do that, then everybody's been happy. If you right click on a layer as well, you'll notice you've now got an export channel to PSD as well. So you can export to.
Yeah, always do that design.
So, but what I can do is I can introduce the blend modes and control it like that as well. What we've also got is we've also got layer masks as well. So you can use Photoshop, got a lot of layer masks with panel. You can do that inside the box as well. They're working exactly the same kind of way. So what I'm going to do is have a new diffuse layer. I'll keep the defaults there. So we'll go very quickly. So very quickly, I'm just going to use my paintbrush here. Give a red colour. Sorry. So I'll just quickly paint there. Nothing too pretty, I know, but that'll do that for now. So what I'll now do, I'll just go right click on my paint layer and choose new layer mask. And that will add a layer mask in exactly the same way that you used to do it in Photoshop. And again, I can go to my projection brush, go to my image browser, I can choose a pattern I want to maybe include or layer off. I'll just use that tiger mask there. And just positions you roughly the right place. Just make that out. So you can see I'm able to actually control not only kind of where the actual pattern goes, but I can also use the layer mask to control what actually gets the mask off as well. Now, of course, I don't have to stop there. I can actually now continue to add yet another layer mask and maybe add a gradient map to control how much of the pattern is actually on the back of my character's spine there. So again, I can go in the image browser and just choose maybe like a gradient map like so, set that as my stencil, bring this back into my 3D view. As well, it's kind of like it doesn't quite fit. Well, you know, we can do tiling in these things as well. So we can just scroll in here. Let's just use tiles, and I've got that there as well. And again, I can just paint this on like so. So I'm painting the actual gradient, but remember this is actually a layer mask. So again, I can change the blending modes in layers to actually reflect what I'm actually going to see on my character. So now I can sort of make that to say a multiply, and again, I'm able to control. Add an influence gradient on top of that pattern as well. And again, all inside the viewport, and again, multiple objects, multiple UV islands, you know, it doesn't make any difference at all. Now, one thing you can do as well is that we've added a lot more capability to control things like opacity and things like alpha channels and normal maps, you know, which are particularly useful for some of the games guys. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to start again actually, just to give myself a bit of a clean start. So we've added kind of far better enhancements in order to basically support excuse me, things like normal maps. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on this loincloth. So I'm going to isolate this off. So I can right click on any model and just use isolate. That means I can only work on that. Now this loincloth is the same as the other one as well. I've got no sculpt layers. So I'm just going to select the model and rebuild my subdivisions. That seems to have actually kind of worked. Okay. Let's just shovel. Just turn the wireframe so I can see what I'm doing. So as before, I've got the same kind of problem. My UVs have corrupted on here, so I'm going to use the same process as I did before, and my scene here completely open. So I'm just going to basically take this and send this over to Maya, send it to scene. But this time I'm going to do a little bit more manual UV work, so I want to get in there, I mean, because most of it is kind of working, I've just got little glitches up here. So let's go into Maya. So there we are. Here it is. So this is goes to my UV texture editor. So you can see that those changes aren't too much at all, so I'm just going to quickly manually do this just for quickness sake. And again, I wouldn't have been able to do this inside my box because my box doesn't have any UV tools.
So how did these glitches actually happen? Just from reducing the polygon?
Yeah, because you're basically, if you're taking a high-res mesh which has got, say, 4,000 polygons, and you're subdividing down to, say, just 200, that's quite a big gap, and of course the UV mapping doesn't always compute. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. If you've got sub-islands and multiple islands on it, sometimes it matches up, sometimes it doesn't. You know, it's not down to the process not working, it's often just down to the complexity of the asset. But that's always going to happen. You know, it's very hard to kind of down-res and downscale from UVs. So you can subdivide up, but it's often very hard to go back down. Okay, so that's now kind of done, and again, I don't have to worry about that now, so I can just click my update button, and those changes will go straight into my box. And that's now fixed because there's no changes to the topology, just the UV data, so that's automatically corrected as well. So what I want to do now is I want to add a normal map for this guy, and so because I've been able to recreate the subdivisions, I've now got my low-res base mesh, and I've still got my high-res mesh inside the scene. I can now, you know, extract a normal map from the high-res version and then just place it onto the low-res version. So I go to our maps feature, extract texture maps, and we can do the normal map. There we are. So straight away, I've got my my target model, so I can easily select my mesh here. So if I was to add the source, for example, it automatically chooses the highest level of subdivision for me, because that's what you want when generating a normal map, with the highest res data. But of course, if I wanted to, I could choose whichever subdivision I want. So then I've got complete freedom to do that as well. If I had selected for the target, it automatically adds the base mesh as well. Now of course, if you're in SolidWorks games, even some film pipelines, they have multiple levels of LOD as well. But you can add however many targets on here is what you want. And you can generate one map for all of the targets or one map for each individual one as well. So you've got the flexibility there to kind of choose whichever suits your requirement. Now we've got two methods, we've got raycasting or subdivision. So the subdivision is the same, it's not changed or anything like that. Image size, again, I can go up to like 4K or 8K, really is entirely my prerogative. Now compatibility, Microsoft Image use the same kind of basic mapping in terms of normal maps. But again, if I was using a map, so I'm just going to choose that, and again, I can bake out my normal maps, but no, they're actually going to work. Get the tangent space as normal. And now I just kind of give it an actual name. So I tend to use TIFs and all this kind of stuff, and I've also got some there already, so I'll just give that a name and click save. Now it's got next to preview as normal map, in small print, if you can read that. So I'm just going to click extract, it won't take too long, and I'll just talk about that. So what we want to do now is that if we've got the normal map, you want to see that actually on the model. So, so by hitting that little button there, what Mudbox will now do, it will extract the normal map and it will plug it into a paint layer and also the right channel as well. And once that's in that channel, I can use it and manipulate it like any other paint layer basically. So there we are, that's all kind of worked. Let's click OK. Let's just close that. You can see, I just deselect that. That's my normal map now being displayed on the viewpoint. You can see that's the wireframe is still there. And of course, if I go to my paint layers, I've now got my normal map paint layer, and now I can start to change this. I can maybe control the actual opacity, for example. I can even maybe even go more than that and just type in say 200 and see how that looks as well. So again, I can actually make this kind of visual quality decision. I could also, if I wanted to, maybe duplicate this as well. Turn this off and maybe start going to what can I use down here? Maybe the contrast brush, and start to maybe kind of enhance certain bits. As you can see, as I'm painting, we'll begin to boost up the normal map as well. So again, I can actually start painting on my normal map directly on the actual mesh, directly with the viewport as well. Now this is all very well, but very often, some of the stuff that often actually goes directly into the actual game model, actually inside the 3D scene itself. So I'm just going to delete that. Now what I could do now is, with that all still selected, I've still got, you know, the scene inside Maya still there. So what I can now do, because I've added new textures, I'm just going to go File, Send to Maya, Update Textures in Current Scene. So when I do that, it will send over only the updated textures, which in this case is going to be the normal map. And once this is finishing processing, go to viewport 2.0. I can now get my normal map being displayed in the Maya scene as well. So again, this is very common. I might build I could be doing some animation, I could be doing my character rigging inside Maya, which is normal. And again, I can actually see, I can see the normal map working in my 3D scene as much as in the Mudbox scene. And again, I can continue to make changes as well. So one other thing we've decided to do as well, if I want to maybe kind of tune this up a little bit, so this loincloth looks a little bit too clean and tidy, so what I want to do is maybe think about maybe kind of roughing it up a little bit, make it a little bit more frayed. So I'm going to add a new paint layer, but this time I'm going to choose opacity. And this is now essentially enabling to paint an alpha channel. So I'll go to my paintbrush and choose something like the black colour. I can now start painting out the parts of it here, like so. So I'm going to be a bit rough here. Now, as I'm painting, you still see parts of the actual mesh. So I'm going to turn off the wireframe. But I've still got some bits coming through there, and that's because I've got a specular channel as well. And of course, the alpha channel isn't quite working on that. So what I can easily do is, if I just continue painting off the areas that I don't actually need, just a bit of quickness, I can now sort of duplicate that very quickly, and I can, as it's just essentially an alpha channel, I can just drag this into specular as well. So my specular will be alpha as well. And then so I don't get that conflict as well. And what I can do, I can select this model, and again I can see how this looks inside Maya, so I'll update textures in current scene again. And again, all the time I keep doing this and seeing how it looks inside my Maya scene as well. Then, because what I could do, you could say, well, I actually still prefer to work in Photoshop. There's nothing actually wrong with that. So what you can do now, you can actually bring in Photoshop into this part of the process as well. So let's just go into it. There we are. So you can see that there's my alpha channel inside the viewport as well. Now, if I prefer to work in Photoshop, for example, so I'll open up Photoshop now. If I go back into now, here's my opacity layer. I can now choose to export this as a PSD file. And what's quite interesting as well is because Photoshop's a 2D package, really, so it's just to minimise that. Now let's export the channel to PSD file. Now I can just call this whatever I so want. And this will load this into Photoshop for me. There we go. So you can see it brings in 3 layers on this absolutely shocking display. Just about to see it there. There's 3 layers, so I've got my UVs laid out as well, just as a guide, and I've got a layer here which is essentially the one I paint on. So you can see it's black because that's what the alpha channel actually is. So I'm just going to put that. So what I can do now, if I go back into Mudbox, I've now got this little dialog box. It's now I can now edit my PSD file in my author naming convention. It says this re-import is greyed out, basically. It's greyed out because I've not made any changes to it. So at the moment, as soon as I start making any changes to this, so let's go to my paintbrush, for example, which is my paint layer, and again I can go a bit silly and nuts on this as well. And I'm just going to essentially just save that. Now as soon as I've saved that, this box has now become live again. I'm going to click that box again, and it's re-importing straight back into the scene. So you can see I've now got 3 packages open. I've got Photoshop, I've got Mudbox, I've got Maya, I could have it with Max as well, and I'm the ping stuff, and all a not quit one, a not closed one. Again, at any time, that's all kind of done. I can just select my model again and just do the file, set to Maya, update textures in current scene again, and again I can see that over into my target as well. So I've got the flexibility now to mix and match between all those 3 packages. And I'm still on one workstation as well. So. See that there's my the opacity still corrupts because I haven't created the extra channel yet for the opacity layer, but again I can quickly resolve that inside my box really easily. So that just gives a a kind of I think really good example of how you can start pinging data to and from each one at any particular time. And again, this works just as well with maps as well, so you've got complete flexibility on that. So one thing I was also going to touch on very quickly because it's so short in time. So one of the other things we've added as well is mentioned downstairs in the main session is the ability to now do tiles. So you can now sculpt in tiles and also paint in tiles as well. So this is very common in games and also in film as well. You want to create like a texture or pattern which you basically want to be able to kind of use over again over a large area. So being able to create that tiling, go to Photoshop, use the offset filter, fine workflow, still be used to that, but we can now do a tiling plane inside the box. Now straight away, it gives me the ability to how many quads I want on the plane and how many actual tiles, and I can create a tile for extraction as well. So if I just create that inside my viewport, so there it actually is. I'll just turn on my grid, and I'll turn on the actual wireframe. Now, what I can do is there's no sculpt layer, there's no paint layer, so if I was to just boost up the actual subdivisions quite a lot, so 9,000, 37,000, 150,000, 590,000, almost a lot. 2 million. So if I go to my sculpt layer now, and maybe choose stamp. If I sculpt here, it will automatically tile across. So if I turn off my wireframe, you can see now I can start now to tile on this side and automatically update on the other. So I can start to really go nuts on this. And of course, if I want to, I can just undo that and even just go back and just bring in the erase tool. Which I don't have sculpt layers, so that's my problem. But you can do it on paint layers as well. So I've added a diffuse layer and bring my paint tools. So again, you can create not only sculpts in tiles, but also then paint layers in tiles as well. So you do like complete tile patterns. And of course, when you come to the extraction map process as well, you can basically do ambient occlusion, vector displacements, displacement normal maps, and they will also be perfectly tileable as well. So yes, you can use Endo, the Photoshop plugin. It's very cool. I've got it installed, and that's very good. But the thing is with this is that you're actually creating the normal map based upon actually painting on the model. You're making a decision there and then as you're painting with it. As good as the Endo plugins are, and some of the other crazy bump or whatever, they're always based upon a 2D image, which is a good normal map, but you're always going to get better fidelity by working in a 3D model with 3D data. You know, and of course, you can also start doing like kind of vector displacement maps as well, which gives you the ability to not only kind of have the height maps of data, but also remembers the points and the vertexes or the point normal direction of the edges that actually as well. So that's a really, really good, really good function there as well. Okay, so what are we at? 2:40. Okay, a bit of time. And one thing I want to talk about as well is talking on transferring details. Is the ability to not only transfer sculpt details, but also transfer painting details as well. Now let me just find a very quick demo scene. Just indulge me, give me my time whilst I look it up. So I'm going to choose this asset here. So hard surface object, nothing too spectacular. Now, there's no UVs on this whatsoever. Now, in order to paint in my box, you have to paint, you need UVs. Now, if I want to start painting, but don't have the time to create UVs, that's going to be a bit of a pain in the arse, quite frankly. So what I'm going to do is, I'm actually going to send this over to my box now to try to see. And what we can do in my box, you can start painting without UVs. Now you can use PTEX. If you don't know what PTEX is, I'm going to try and go through it now, but I'll explain it later. It's basically painting without UVs. It's black art, Jedi art, voodoo, but it's really cool. But you know, but that's a bit out there. If you just want a simple UV map, fine. So I can now just create UVs. It'll ask me how many tiles I want in 0, 1 space. I'll just give it 1. And there's UVs created successfully. And there's my UVs. Awful layout, I know. Pretty dreadful, I know. It doesn't matter. At this moment, my art director's barking at me. I want to see this texture, I want to see what that looks. And this is really good because I can start painting without actually committing to the UV workflow. UVs are a pain in the arse to do. I used to hate doing UVs. In fact, I still hate doing UVs. But I can now start painting. So let's just do this and paintbrush. So this adds. Imaginative black tire texture. Use your imagination a bit here. So that's fine. My art director's really hassling me, so I think, okay, fine. I'll add another paint layer there. And this time I use a projection brush, I'll use a stencil. I'll choose this rust pattern there. Really happy with that. Just cutting edge. And then I might want to add another paint layer as well. Change my, for some reason I want to have hair just there. So that's my brilliant wheel. In the meantime, I can open up another version of mine. So you know, this same one-click single stepping drop. Sorry. You know, it's not just restricted to one copy. I can open multiple copies of the software. So there's my copy of mine. Let's go back to my directory. It's dragging the wheels on now for this asset, which could have been done by someone completely different in the studio. And now I've got some UVs, thinking that's more like it. You know, I can work like that. So okay, that's fine. So now what I'll do is this time I'll send these over to my box, but now I'm going to add to the current scene. So let's flip back into my box. That's my object list. I've now got two meshes inside my scene. So I've got this one here, UVs, and I've got the other one there, the hairy wheel. Cool. So what I want to do is, of course, I've got this stuff here, bad UV layout. This one here, nice UV layout. And I want to transfer the paint layers from one to the other. Two completely different topologies in terms of UV layout. The object's the same. And what I'll do is I will now go to my extract texture maps operation, transfer paint layers. So my target is the new one. That's selected. The source, the one I had already. That's selected. I've used all the same methods I had before, my extract and normal maps. Same as source, I'm transferring on paint layers. I'm just going to leave it as it is. I'm just going to click extract, and that will go. And what this will do, it will transfer those 3 paint layers with my rust, my hair, and my dodgy tire texture onto the new model with my correct layout and things. So what this basically does, it really gives you the benefit of being able to kind of work in different ways. You could be specking out or just maybe roughing out some basic workflows before then committing to maybe doing the UV lab. You could be working with outsourcing, for example. You could be working with freelancers. You could be getting assets from different types of people. The last thing you want to do is redo all that work all over again. So it's all wasted. So, 43%. I think it's reading off my USB drive, which is why it's a bit slow, but it's usually pretty quick. You've got if you do have high-res objects, it can be a bit time-consuming, but on a Beefield workstation, it does actually work pretty quickly. Now, also as well, this will work also with PTEX as well. So, if you've created a whole, character using nothing but PTEX, you want to transfer it onto a mesh that's actually got UVs, you can do that as well. So I'm going to be finishing in just a second, and Jamie's getting ready to pounce with his Connect. He's still peddling that Connect thing in there. It doesn't improve Battlefield 3, it doesn't. Anybody play Battlefield 3?
Yeah.
Yeah? It's good, isn't it?
Sometimes.
Yeah, but Modern Warfare 3 is going to come out. I've got high hopes for Modern Warfare 3. Oh no. It's the last in the series, so I think they're going to go out on a bit of a bang, so to speak. Oh. Okay, so it's taking a little longer than I thought, actually, but as soon as I've done this, it does work, believe me, and then I'll make way for Jamie to do them. Whilst this is tuners, did anybody have any questions? I've been rabbiting on, and you've all been very gracious and ignoring me, so... yes, sorry, hello.
When this actually finishes,
yep.
It's going to respect the paint layers. It's going to, when it transfers, it won't compress into one paint layer.
So you can replace the paint layers. You can selectively choose which paint layers get transferred across as well, or you could just blitz them, or you can add to them. I could have added paint layers onto the new mesh, and it just would have transferred. It would have added to the rather than replacing.
And the same goes for PTEX. PTEX leads to a.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. It's non-destructive. One of the things with Mudbox in particular is that they're always very focused on production-based issues. So pretty much everything that goes into that package is based around some kind of production problem or issue which our customers have needed resolved. And basically that's really where the focus of the tool is. Why is this taking so long? Yes, sorry, you had a question. Yep. Yep. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. You can if you take a bump map and drag it into a normal map channel, it will convert the bump map into a normal map for you. So you keep the bump map there, but if you want to drag it into a normal map channel, it'll do the conversion for you because we're good like that. So, again, people said, well, if you're going to create a normal map, you want to do the conversion anyway. So yeah, but you will build work with bump maps. Again. Yeah, but we've also added the hotkeys and shortcuts work the same with build maps as well. So one thing we're trying to do by the suites is that if you buy a suite, then keyboard shortcuts, you can adapt it to Mac's shortcuts and hotkeys if you want to. As Jamie and myself will testify, we are completely two different people. So. There we are. So you can see that. So now, admittedly, I've got a little bit of pinching here because obviously it's gone from the UV space. But if you look on the side as well, it's even transferred all my god awful paint strokes as well. That is awesome. I could have done with that 10 years ago. I could have done it 5 years ago. Where were you 5 years ago? But this is great. I mean, this is like, it's been such a time saver for us internally, because I've been able to transfer stuff to from, I can tidy up that UV thing quite easily in a few seconds. That's going to be quicker than trying to re-UV map the whole thing. And again, it's a big time saver. And again, I could have continued to add lots more paint layers. It did take a long time, but don't let that deceive you. It does take a short time to tell the resolution of the actual. Yes, sorry. I'm not going to have time, but I can talk to you separately about motion if you want to. I'm going to, if you have your own private demo. Do you have any questions quickly before I... Yes?
Once you've set up project on file, and you've done your textures,
yeah.
When you do the transfer, where will those textures go? Will it go to the source image file?
You can decide where they want. You can decide where they go. Really. On the transfer, they will go into, like I think, the source images file, but you can change that if you want to.
Is it one box the source images file or in Maya source?
You'll go into
Maya.
Maya.
Set at the beginning.
Yeah, you don't have to, but what it does is part of the process. Just like part of the process, it dumps them into the Maya project, or wherever you specify the Maya project. Because in Maya we changed it so that you can now actually change the project window and specify exactly. You could do a secondary project location as well. You know, so the idea is that the single steps, it's just a shortcut. You can go in there and change it if you want to. It's the same process as going File, Export Selected, FBX File. You know, the idea is we've just made a little bit of a shortcut for most. 9 times out of 10, most people go for the single step each one. But again, it will go into the Maya directory, but you can specify where it goes.
So it's not like crazy.